What's up, guys? Welcome back to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at NIO stock, ticker symbol NIO, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Thursday, March 7th. Alright guys, NIO stock here today up 29 cents a share. That's 5.29% with quite the opening drive here, quite the run off the open. Let's take a look here at this name, starting with our daily ritual, the volume profile analysis on this kind of crazy morning today on the 5-minute chart. Listen, if you're new here, please subscribe to the channel. My goal is to hit 5K subs here. Greatly appreciate you climbing aboard, and I'll do my best to continue to provide free value for you every day. So what I'm looking for here on the 5-minute is increasing volume, or big changes in volume, I should say, really, that correlate with a big move, a big obvious move in stock price, but it has to be looked at, this is where I think a lot of people go wrong, through the lens of what is contextual for that particular time of day. Obviously, we're kind of looking at this here this morning, and really that's kind of the only move I'm interested in here today on NIO. The rest of it was really a lot of consolidation into the close, at least comparatively speaking. So let's take a look at this, okay? What's really interesting about this open, guys, is that we typically see the highest volume bar of the day. It's very common that it's the opening bar. And we end up usually seeing a U shape. All right, but here on NIO today, we saw 5 consecutive candles. Now this one's white because it ended up being a neutral candle. You can see that there on the chart. But it was a part of the drive nonetheless. 5 consecutive consistent volume candles averaging about 4 million shares per candle. That's something to me. This is very obvious, definitive in my opinion. The bulls won today's open, and there's no doubt about that. It was outside of what is typically contextual for an open on any regular trading day. So with that being said, let's move on here now to the 30-minute chart and take a look at psychological levels that I'm going to be paying attention to come tomorrow's trading day. So you can see here that the 50 period and the 200 period, by the way, the only reason I'm interested in these at all is because they are extremely heavily used psychological levels, the most popular indicators you could possibly put on a chart. So that big opening drive here this morning broke us through that 200 period that we were struggling with on Tuesday, and we've now held that. We didn't really get a retest, but we did hold. So if I'm a bull looking at this chart tomorrow, Thursday, what I would love to see is this 50 period create some separation to the upside, crossing over that 200 period, not for the sake of the crossover, but just for the sake of getting that psychological barrier closer to the stock, as close as possible if I'm a bull. And any downside test of that 50 period, that white line, okay, I want to see a hard hold and bounce on ideally above average volume. All right, if I'm a bear, ideally you'd want to see as much weakness as possible, get this 50 period back underneath the 200 period so that level doesn't have that added strength of both of them kind of together, or the 50 period ahead of the 200 period, and get the stock down through the 200, that gray line, on again, ideally above average volume. Now, on to the 4-hour chart here. You can see this one is highly contextual. Okay, it's very much so in play. We currently find ourselves between the 50 period and the 200 period on this chart. So 2 things here. If I'm a bull looking at the 4-hour on NIO tomorrow, any downside test of that 50 period right around 560 as of right now, again, I want to see a good hold and a bounce, a pull away back up toward that $5.86 a share region on above average volume. But really what I'm after, ideally, is a crack above the 200 period, a break upside through, a low volume retest, okay, and then a high volume pull away. That would be beautiful. If I'm a bear here, few things I'd want to see. Ideally, first of all, the 200 period getting below $6 a share. Any upside test of the gray line, the 200, I want to see, again, a hard rejection on above average volume. But really what I'm after is as much volume as possible on a downside break back below the 50 period here on the 4-hour chart in particular. Now, the most important chart of all is going to be the daily chart. And you can see here that that 50-day moving average is currently at about 655. So this is really interesting here. Bulls, ideally, I don't really want that 50-day getting below 650, especially not 6, though that would take time. Having a little bit of a gap there, I would say is a positive. It's about a 13% gap, because that leaves that upside on the daily chart without kind of a psychological barrier in the way to get up toward at least 650 as of the recording of this video, where that 50-day currently is. But the daily chart, we need to look at the most obvious near-term story, because this video is primarily geared toward Thursday, okay? If I'm a bull, two things. Any downside test of 550, I certainly want to hold that as support. But really, what's my goal here that we've kind of been struggling as of late to make happen? Above $6 a share and a close above 6 would be a beautiful thing out of NIO stock tomorrow. And bears, that same mentality kind of paints your story as well. If you're a bear, your enemy is $6 a share here on NIO right now. So ideally, to put some distance in between the stock price and $6 a share, bears, you would love to see a crackdown and a close below 550 here tomorrow. Now, implied volatility, where does that currently sit? It is actually sitting in the lower range compared to the last couple of months, really month or so, okay? But just barely, right? You could almost argue the mid to low range. So the lower IV goes, the more favorable conditions typically become for new options buyers to come in and purchase contracts, looking for not only, to be correct directionally, but also for a return to equilibrium in IV, which is a benefit to purchased options. All right, speaking of options, let's take a look. What was the bias in the chain on NIO here today? About 250,000 total contracts traded, 244K. 163,000 of those were calls, and about 80,000 of those were puts. So we're seeing heavy call side bias in the chain here today on NIO. If we break that down by average time frame, right, the 0 to 20 delta range, that's going to be the short-term speculators. Those far out of the money, gambly style speculative calls and puts, 43,000 calls in that range and just under 20,000 puts. So the short-term speculators are clearly leaning to the call side along with that overall ratio. If we start going down the line, though, in terms of delta ranges, the 21 to 40, the just out of the money, right, like kind of average out of the money contracts, we're actually leaning slightly, very slightly to the put side, but the rest of them, the at the money, the in the money, and the deep in the money, are all leaning pretty call heavy. If you guys want to join our private trading group, we're doing educational classes. We're going to start doing quite a bit more of the private classes there in the group. I'm, of course, trading every day, sending out my personal scalp setup alerts, in-play stock alerts. You can kind of think of that as like your in-play scanner that I'm manually pushing through as I see things come across that fit my criteria for a stock that I would consider to be in play and have a lot of trader attention at that exact moment. Take a look at that link in the pinned comment. Hope to see you join. And by the way, if you got value out of this video, please subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one.